I was formally diagnosed with FAS when I was 19, so I guess that's quite, almost 6 years ago now. It fit in a lot of places that I had big holes in, well, why am I like this? Why do I act like this? Why can't I organize anything? There were many questions, and the FAS diagnosis was a big answer. It filled a lot of holes. I don't think anyone is expecting to hear, oh, hey, guess what? You felt different your whole life, but it turns out you actually are a little different. Surprising, but not surprising at all in the same sense. When I was in school, I was very devoted. I usually sat in the front of the class. I was able to answer a lot of questions. I did very well on tests. But as soon as you let me leave school, then that was gone. That had completely left my brain. The way that I prioritized, especially as a child, was that school is at school and home is, play is at home. And so the idea of managing my homework, prepping for a test, doing the reading, these were things that, not because I wanted to be malignant or lazy, just didn't occur to me. When I would be communicated a set of instructions, I would always forget step 3, and then I would forget step 5. And I would remember okay, I remember I have to do this and this, but then what do I do? And it's fascinating because, a lot of the strategies that I've developed today to make myself a successful adult all came out of recognizing that it wasn't so much my brain being lazy, but not processing correctly. That as that information got sorted and stored, it didn't all make it. I mean, there's a lot of difficulties with the chemical processes. My memory is a big problem for me. I have a dreadful short-term memory. I will tell people things 3 or 4 times in a day, and they'll be like, yeah, dude, we were talking about this morning. And so it's a lot of little things, and they add up to a difficulty with organization. I make lists now, for instance. I have a whole book of just lists, and whenever things occur to me and they apply to a certain topic, I just write it down in the list. And it doesn't feel like I'm trying to keep this whole circus cloud of information organized. It's all in my lists. Because the lists were always shorter than I expected them to be in my head. I'd be like, there's a million things I have to do before I have to leave. And then I would write a list down, and there'd only be 9 things I had to do. And then I think to myself, oh wow, that's a lot less than I was expecting. I can't multitask, really, to save my life. So I kind of figure, start this and move into where I can stop doing that and then move into something else. I'm under the surface. My whole life, I've gotten by on one phrase. No, I'm fine. I've got it. It's allowed me to hide in plain sight. People would offer me help. They would offer me assistance. It was my mechanism at that time in my life to say, no, there's nothing wrong with me. Don't need help. Leave me alone. I'm fine. So I could talk my way out of any situation, including the ones when people would say, hey, you're having a little trouble with this, or you seem to be having a little trouble organizing this. And I would say, no, I got it. Don't worry. Things are just a little crazy right now. And I would even say this as a 5th and 6th grader. And I ultimately would have to confront the fact that what's going on is all under the surface. That deep down in the chemical bubbling craziness of the brain is where there's the problem. And it's not in my speech center or my creative thinking center. It's mainly in how everything connects. I could go through probably the rest of my life without ever having anyone actually found out, and I would just be a little bit off and a little bit weird. The diagnosis and that information that I got radically changed my perspectives. And not long after that, I began speaking. Just to kind of tell people, especially caseworkers, social workers, parents, that you're not always going to be able to see it on the surface. You may meet an adult with a job, driving a car. I drove down here in my truck, no problem at all. Fully functional adults who, when you put them, when you get in their head, when you get in the inside, you'll find a hurricane. I've had to deal throughout my life with a tremendous emotional instability, and that's the most obvious feature of my FAS, in that one day I could be really excited and happy, and the next day I could be depressed, fully depressed, not wanting to do anything at all. I could read, or I could just read a comic book or watch a cartoon, and it would just transport me out of feeling like I didn't fit in the world. I could go there. I could just be, use my imagination. And I never walked away from that. Ever since I was a little kid, I collected comic books. And now it's this giant industry. And there's movies and all of this huge conventions and everything. So I'm actually starting a business, buying and selling comic books as a young guy to try to kind of keep it going. The other thing that I do as a hobby is reptiles. Let's see, I have something like 5 or 6 lizards and a couple of snakes and a frog. And I've collected reptiles since I was young as well. I feel like reptiles kind of reminded me of myself in the fact that on the outside, they're one thing, and on the inside, they can have such a dynamic personality. They can be something completely, something you weren't expecting. Something I learned as I got older is that it's important for me to not think of it in a scale that starts at normal and goes all the way to full-blown FAS. The normal thing, well, that doesn't exist at all. I personally believe that when we all look in the mirror, we're all saying, well, there's a little bit weirdness inside here, and what can I do to improve, and what's wrong with me, and why this and why that, and could I be smarter, am I too dumb, am I attractive? I am mildly affected, is the way that I look at the spectrum. Knowing my little brother, who is profoundly affected, he has trouble managing basically anything that's not concrete. So money, time, even his relationships. That's profound effect. He'll never be able to drive. We were in a car accident together, and rather than laugh, rather than cry, he laughs. See, I'm still all jumbled up, too nervous. Rather than cry in a crazy situation sometimes, he'll laugh. And afterwards, I'm driving the car home at about 40 degrees on the wheel, trying to keep it straight on the road, because I didn't want to get a tow truck, stubborn. And he's looking at the wheel and looking at me and looking at the wheel, and then he starts laughing. And I'm about to turn, and because as I'm a little bit emotionally unstable too, and say like, Mike, we were just in a car crash, like what are you laughing about? But it occurred to me that I was turning around in a driveway, and the person hit my driver's side front end hard enough to knock me straight. If I had been any further out in the road, that would have been death. I would have been hit driver's side, broadside at 50 miles an hour. Very little chance of survival. So why on earth am I not laughing? So this was like a big epiphany moment for me, in the sense that I could never hope to teach my little brother as much as he's taught me just about myself.